Hi everyone, I'm Medina from Immigrant Finance, and I'm here today with Wahidah Aziz, who is a financial coach. Who's going to be speaking with us today. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, Dina. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm doing pretty well. Happy to be here.
Yay. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to talking further and hearing about your experiences when it comes to, I know you mentioned scarcity mindset some and adopting that mindset of abundance. That's something super important. We talk about a lot with our community in immigrant finance, and just really excited to hear more about how you made that transition. So, yeah, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, share a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, my name is Wahidah Aziz. I'm a financial coach and founder of Saved It Financial Coaching. I got into personal finance really for like my own gain. I the first year after college, I felt like I was way behind my colleagues. I didn't know anything about personal finance. It was a meeting with HR actually. They were talking about things like a 403b, a retirement account, employer sponsored retirement account, and they mentioned things like an HSA, health savings account. And I was sitting there, I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. But everyone in that room was nodding along like they understood. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm there's something missing and I don't know. So I felt like I was like behind my peers. I felt like I didn't know anything about money. So later that day I like did a deep dive into everything personal finance. And like 7 years later, I just haven't stopped. And now I get to coach other millennial women of color how they can get confident in their own money management skills. And because I was able to like teach myself these skills, I was able to save like $100,000 at the age of 27.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I love how you're turning into your own experience, what you've learned to help others. That's always such a great place to be coming from.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I kind of like fell into my lap because first started talking to my friends and family, like, oh, what are you doing with your money now? Like when I felt more comfortable about it. And it turned out that they weren't doing very much either because there's actually a very big education gap around personal finance in the US. So it's not your fault, right? So I started teaching
Yeah.
my friends and family. Um, and turns out like I really enjoyed it and I was good at it. So I'm like, oh, let's keep doing this.
I relate. Definitely. Yeah. My experience, and my husband and I have kind of gone through it all personally as well, and learning as we go. And then it's like, once you realize how much of a difference it can make, there's so much to learn. And you just want to share it with everyone.
For sure.
Right. Yeah. So, what is your connection to immigration, and how has that played into your story?
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like immigration has is a big part of like my story. So my siblings and I are first generation Americans. My family's from Malaysia. So the majority of our like extended family, our cousins, our aunts, uncles, are like third cousins. I've met my fourth cousins in Malaysia when I visited. Actually, they're all there for the most part. Um, but my immediate family, most of my immediate family, are here in the U.S. And that was because about 30 years ago, my dad decided to study abroad in the US. He came to a university in Indiana where we grew up, and he brought along his wife, my mom. And so essentially, he was an international student, and they started their family there. And then after he graduated from college, he ended up overstaying his visa actually. And like this really wasn't something we talked about as a family often or ever. Like we would like my dad would kind of like brush it on the under the rug until we just couldn't anymore. So by the time I was 13 and my oldest sister was 18, both of our parents were removed from the US. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
thank you. Like it happens, yeah. And it's something I'm like very much comfortable talking about now, but it was definitely something that was hard to go through. But like it made us very acutely aware of like how immigration policies have like real consequences on families. But yeah, and it's actually never it's not something I've shared publicly with people before. Like I'll talk one on one, no problem, but I've never shared this on a public platform like this. So, but after learning more about immigrant finance and what you do, I was like, oh, this is a story I want to share with you and with your audience as well.
I'm really honored, and it's very brave of you. So thank you for sharing. I know it will help other people feel less alone who've gone through that. And this is real stuff people are going through, and people listening to this show. So thanks for being so courageous to share that. Wow, I can only imagine how much that would affect your everything, the finances, from the practical to the mindset. So, did that lead you and your siblings to have to kind of raise yourselves on your own and figure out finances early?
Yeah, for the most part, we did have a support system, so we did have a strong community. They helped us out where they could, and we had very good neighbors that would keep an eye on us as well. But for the most part, like we were still just children, like kind of trying to figure it out on our own.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, we grew up quickly. But we did become very strong as a family because we all had to lean on each other and we essentially were there for each other. So there was a silver lining, I guess, in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine you all had to make such a strong bond to get through that experience and survive. And, um, you know, I'm sure you've also had to deal with like maintaining, the relationship with your parents and borders and all that. Have you been able to visit Malaysia and see them?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So
That's great.
in the beginning, we visited like only a few times because the money was just tight, maybe I think like twice. And
Yeah.
then as we got older, we started kind of like making our own money. We were able to visit a little more often. When my brother got married, he had his wedding actually in Malaysia. So that was a pretty exciting thing for my
Oh, that's
parents. But
amazing.
yeah. So it's been, we've kind of figured it out kind of for the most part. But yeah, we definitely had to stumble our way through it but we're here now, like we're doing okay for the most part.
Yeah.
And I feel like we turned out okay. I think our parents are proud of us.
I mean, and the fact now you're helping other people be able to handle their finances and get more stable. I mean, that just, you have so much life experience to share and how to do that from this. So I know you were going to talk a little bit about scarcity mindset. So how did that start to come in and play out growing up?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so like you mentioned, like I grew up around the poverty line, and I watched like family members struggle with money and make avoidable financial mistakes. And like you pick up on those things when you're younger. Like I remember the conversations my parents had with the two of them, and my dad would say like we just don't have the money for it. And I remember like my dad, like his sigh of frustration, like every time he had to pay for groceries. Um, it stuck, and I learned very quickly to just not ask for anything. Um,
Mhm.
and I also learned that like the lack of money like meant the lack of power. It meant the lack of security and the lack of stability. So this led me to adopt a scarcity mindset, which meant like I felt like I was the money situation I was in at that time, like essentially not having enough of it. I felt like that was a permanent situation for me. Um, so,
Mm.
so like because I felt that way, it made me save just as much as I could, and I felt guilty whenever I had to spend any money. Even if it was on things like I needed, like groceries, I still felt guilty. Um, And like honestly, having that scarcity mindset allowed me to be really great at saving money, but I was depriving myself of like any pleasure because it cost something. And that's really just not healthy. But yeah, after 10 years of like financial stability, I'm still learning how to like spend my money without feeling guilty. So it definitely takes time and practice.
Absolutely. So much of what you've said resonates with what I've seen with a lot of people we've worked with and in my own family too. So I'm not an immigrant. I'm the great granddaughter of refugees, and like my parents were the first generation to be more financially stable growing up. And even with that, like the scarcity mindset was real. And I always talk about my dad freaking out and getting really upset if I left the lights on, or like, he would turn the car off even if we were just pausing for like 10 seconds or something to save gas, that kind of thing. And I always say it like really continues with each generation if you don't actively try to rewrite those stories and relationships with money. And I've seen with a lot of the students and clients we've worked with that like the same thing. People are kind of on one end of the spectrum or another sometimes, like either overspending or like really afraid to spend. And like what you're describing, feeling guilty for even getting basic necessities, groceries. So I think that's really important for you to name and acknowledge because a lot of people are going through that. So tell us, why is that important to challenge that type of relationship with money, and what makes you want to work on receiving and spending money more?
Yeah. I mean, like money's meant to be spent, right? Even like the money we save for like and invest for retirement, that's meant to be spent just like at a later date. So when I was in that scarcity mindset, like in the depth of it, I was saving with no end goal. I was just like saving to like, I don't know, just in case. So like, because I felt like I was never going to get out of that situation. So I was just saving for there was no number I was trying to save towards. And it didn't matter like how much I had in the bank account. I didn't even really look at how much I had in the bank because it didn't matter. But being in that situation, like I was always like in anxiety of like, oh, I can't spend any money. I would like actually skip meals. I remember in college, there was this office for students, and they would give out free hot chocolate. So if I was in the middle of the day and I didn't bring my lunch, or like I didn't bring enough, I would always like go to the office and just like um, drink a whole bunch of hot chocolates. So I'm like, oh, this free hot chocolate will just like hold me over until I can get home. Like I wouldn't even go buy a sandwich that cost $3. So it was unhealthy. I wasn't eating healthy. I was just like trying to like buy the cheapest things, the cheapest foods. I wasn't like really enjoying like time with friends. I was just like in this constant state of like anxiety, of like trying to save as much as I could. And
Yeah.
it's not healthy for your mind, and like it can affect you physically as well. So that's why, yeah, it's definitely important to like address it and to know that like money is meant to be spent. We just want to make sure we're spending it on things that align with our values and our financial goals.
That's a really clear way to put it. Money is meant to be spent. I like that framing. What led you to that clarity and like that thought process?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't come upon that until like maybe recently, maybe just like a few years ago, when I heard another financial coach say it. It's like where money is meant to be spent, like, and that helped me to understand, like, oh, like align what you're trying to, like what your goals are and spend towards that, because
Yeah,
like we're not trying to like die and like have a whole bunch of money like saved away. Like we're trying to enjoy, we want to enjoy it now. And
totally.
I've also heard of stories where retirees uh, who have gotten very good at like saving, they're able to like save and invest for their retirement, but by the time that they are in retirement, they haven't flexed their spending muscle, so they have a hard time of like enjoying their money. So like,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh, I'm actually on that path. So I kind of had to readjust for the most part and like figure out what's important to me and like figure out what I want to be spending on, figure out what my goals are, and like make sure my spending was aligned to that.
Wow, this is really brilliant. And I really appreciate you digging into this because there's a lot of nuance there. Like, let me just tease you out a little bit more because I think people really need to hear this. There's this idea, and I remember my husband Mal saying this when he first immigrated here, and we were trying to get into investing, and it was the first time for him, like no one in Ecuador really invests where he's from, and he just had this concept of like, why would I save all my money for when I'm older and I can't enjoy it? Like I want to enjoy life now when I'm young. And so I don't think you're talking about that extreme. Like it's more nuanced than that, right? It's like, okay, but you need to have stability for retirement so that you can not have to worry about money when you're old and can't work. But there's something in the middle. Like you can also enjoy your life now and not be so extreme where like you're only thinking of the long term.
Yeah.
Right? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you just don't only want to think about the long term because you might end up 20 years out, 30 years out, and you've got the money in the bank, but like you still are having trouble spending it. So like you want to make sure you're enjoying your life throughout, but hitting your financial goals as well.
Yeah, and one other thing I just want to add is how I've heard about these concepts is more like this idea that money is energetic. It's like it's called a currency because it's like a current and it needs to flow. And when you get blocks in the flow, that's when things stop flowing. And like so, with business owners, I've seen with other business owners and also with our business, like if we get into that place where we're in scarcity mindset, worrying a lot about money, the blocks come in and the money kind of stops flowing. So sometimes you need to actually be spending in your business in order to have like that energy flowing where you are bringing in money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So what steps did you take to start branching into the mindset of abundance and adopting that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started actually practicing like value-based spending, and I came upon this like accidentally, actually, and I didn't realize I was doing this until like later on when I came upon the term. But like after I got my first job after college, I was like making entry level income. I think I was making like $32,000 in Indiana. But at the time, that was the most money I've ever had. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what should I be doing with this money? I kept thinking like, oh, I need to spend it. I was like, oh, should I go shopping? Should I buy a new phone? Do I get a new car? And I was only thinking that because I guess society tells you like you should be spending, you should be buying. So when I had more money than I had like ever before, I was like, oh, I need to spend it. But I was still like fighting like the action of like actually being able to spend, like because I was still in that scarcity mindset. And like after being so strict with myself, I like really couldn't imagine like dropping that kind of money on myself. So I just really thought through like what I should be buying, and because I felt like I needed to really. So like when I went through like, oh, maybe I should buy a phone or maybe I should buy like go shopping, I was like, I couldn't imagine spending something on myself, like that kind of money on myself. So I thought about like what would be something I could spend on. And it landed on like spending money on our family cat. Because we love the cat, right? And we all like saw the cat as a family, as part of the family. Actually, I have a cat my friend gave me.
Oh, so cute.
Yeah. They got this for me for my birthday. But yeah, so I was like, let me start spending on Mr. Boots. Mr. Boots is his like nickname. Puss in Boots is what we named him. But but I started upgrading his food. I made sure that he did get to the vet regularly and that he was getting his annual shots. And like I was spending like hundreds of dollars at this point because like going to the vet, to my surprise, is quite pricey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And I found that like I wasn't regretting the money I was spending on him. And it was actually making me happy to be spending on the cat. And yeah,
Amazing.
and I was like, oh, I want to like start chasing this feeling. And that's when I was being more mindful on like what I was spending and trying to find out like what was worth my money. And I did that
Mhm.
by actually just like before paying my credit card bill, I would take a look at my credit card bill and go line by line. And just like me, it was just me scrolling through the statement. I would just like take a look at it and I'd ask myself, like, was this purchase worth it? And for the
Mm.
purchases where I was like, oh, yes, that was worth it. Like, oh, that because that purchase made me feel happy. Like, I enjoyed spending that money. It usually was because I was like buying someone a gift or I was meeting up with a friend for like dinner to catch up. And I quickly found out like, oh, those are the expenses that I'm happy to spend on because it makes me feel excited and happy. And that's how I started learning like what I truly did value. And that was like the first steps
Mhm.
of like spending on my values, making sure my spending was aligned.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I teach a really similar approach. I wasn't actually aware of the term value-based spending, but that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, I've talked about it more in terms of like being really clear on your goals and making sure that you have a line item in your budget for something that gives you joy and like getting really clear on what that one thing is that really does. Because probably what happened when you spend the money on the cat or like anyone who spends the thing on money on the thing that really gives them joy is you're less tempted to go blow like $200 at Target or and just like spend money on stuff that doesn't actually give you happy because you're in alignment. And there's so much of it is about mindfulness. So I appreciate you kind of alluding to that. There's a lot of crossover with meditation and just becoming more self aware.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. So how has it been? Like, how does it feel like after going through what you've gone through in your life and starting off in scarcity mindset to being able to tap a little, like give a picture for people what that feels like who are new to this concept?
Yeah, yeah. And like I talk about like being able to be in a more like of an abundance mindset, like adopting that abundance mindset, but like it's still like I mentioned before, like I still have to practice it every day. Like when I make that purchase, like when I'm making purchases, I still have to like give myself permission to make certain purchases because I
Mm-hmm.
like there's still a little bit of like scarcity mindset. Like I'm still living in like you mentioned like with businesses, like if you're in like a scarcity mindset and you're not like spending to like grow your business, like that's when like cash flows can
Mm-hmm.
stop. And it's very,
Exactly.
very true. And that's
It's
where,
so true, right?
yeah.
Go
And
through it constantly.
yeah, yeah. So like I still have to like tell myself like you have to spend on growth. You still have to like spend money in certain areas. So like because if you don't, like those cash flows will stop. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm still like working through that every day. Like and personally, when I'm spending it on a credit card, I still have to like go through I have like a list of questions that I ask myself and I teach to clients as well, essentially to align yourself with your spending, like essentially asking yourself like, is this aligned with your values? And if it is, like which value is it? Is
Mm.
there an alternative to what you're spending to like still get the same like feeling that you're trying to get with that spending, or like, and is this purchase going to be worth it? So like when I go through those questions, and if I like can tell myself yes for all those, then I'm like, okay, I can spend this money, I can spend it guilt free, and I don't have to like worry about it for the most part. So
I
Yeah.
love that. That's super empowering.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So like it's been 10 years of me being like financially stable and our family being financially stable, but it's still I still have to work through the scarcity mindset, like, and still give myself permission to spend money on myself and like what I enjoy and what I value.
Yeah, I really relate. I have been trying to challenge myself. One of my coaches assigned me this homework to make myself spend like a set amount of money every month on something that feels like luxurious or beautiful, opulent, And it's so hard for me because I totally have the scarcity mindset too. I'm constantly working through. So yeah, I think that's really helpful for you to share with people, and it's challenging, but I have found like the more I practice into that, the more abundance will flow, because when we're in the scarcity mindset, it's like that fight or flight mode, and you're trying to control and you're trying to clench on and hold on to every dollar you have, and it just really cuts off that energy. And I think we're all meant to be growing, and our businesses are meant to be growing, and as people we're meant to be. So it's like you have to let yourself, and I like how you're talking about spending as a way to do that. It sounds like of like letting yourself kind of grow and expand.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like when you adopt that like abundance mindset, like the money comes, like you spend a little bit now, but it comes right back. So I
Yeah,
agree.
definitely. Well, this has been so enlightening to share. What would be like the number one lesson to share with people that you wish you had learned about in the beginning of your finance journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, I mean, there's a lot of things I wish I knew, right?
Yes.
but, but I guess the number one lesson I wish I knew earlier in my personal finance journey would be to invest, essentially, to invest as early as you can. Because
Yeah.
you cannot save your way to wealth. You have to invest. And growing up, I had like a good understanding that I should be saving my money and I shouldn't be spending more than I have. So that I had down pat. But beyond that, I didn't really know any other money management skills. So years after college and like during college as well, like I had about like $10,000 sitting in a checking account. And that was way beyond like what I needed for an emergency fund back then on like the budget I was on. But it was just sitting in a checking account, just sitting there for years. And it was just sitting there in a checking account making basically no interest. And it was sitting there because I didn't know where that there was a better place to put it. And
Hmm.
that was just like lost money for years that it was just
Yeah.
sitting. But like one of the biggest factors on being able to build wealth through investing is time, because like the
Right.
younger you are, like the more that time is on your side because of compound interest. And like compound interest essentially is where your money is making money off of itself, and that cycle just keeps continuing. So I wish I knew earlier of the power of investing, so I could essentially get my money to work for me a lot sooner than it did.
Very much support that. You are preaching to the choir over here. I'm always saying that too. And yeah, can't emphasize enough how important that is, and how, in a bank account your money is really losing value because of inflation. I'm just kind of tying together what you've been talking about with abundance and the importance of investing, and it's just making me think about how that's a form too of how we always need to be expanding and growing. Just like spending money, it was, you talked about it being difficult, but needing that to kind of open up for more money to come in. And with investing, that's literally what it is. It's like spending. It's not really spending, I guess, but in some ways, there's some degree of risk. You may lose it, I guess, potentially, but by doing it, you open up this channel for that compound interest and for the money to grow exponentially in a way that's really hard to do in any other way. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So like if you're listening and you have your emergency fund fully funded and you've paid off your high interest credit card debt, like it might be time to start looking into investing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you have some debt, I always like to say to people, I don't know your thoughts on this, but I don't think people should have to wait until they pay off all their debt in order to start investing, right? You can have both goals and attack both at the same time. And there's lots of wealthy people who carry debt and invest a lot. So there's no reason that people who are more low income shouldn't.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great. Is there anything else you want to add that you think is important for immigrants and family members of immigrants to know about on any of these topics?
I mean, I guess this is just like in general, like something I had to learn, like ask for help. Like if you have
Mm.
questions on anything in particular, like maybe it's investing or maybe it's the other things and parts of your lives, like ask for help, like ask around, like be open for like answers and guidance. Like it was something I had to learn. Like when I grew up, we had a family situation I felt like no one else was going through. So we never talked about it and we never asked for help really. And years later, it turned out a few good friends of us had similar situations happen within their family. And if we just talked about it a little bit more, we could have leaned on each other. And like, I feel
Mm.
like even like different things, if when I ask for help, it comes to me. So just a general advice for life, like seek help if you need it. Like there's answers and guidance for you for sure.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. And thank you for being so generous with all of your insights and sharing your experiences with us. Where can people find you, follow you, and support you?
Yeah, of course. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've like enjoyed this so much. But you can follow me on Instagram. My name is Saved It Financial Coaching. You can find me on LinkedIn as well at Saved It Financial Coaching. If you want to find me on my website, I also do like a 30-minute free consultation. If you would like, I have my website. You can find me at saveditfinancialcoaching.com. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This has been
Great.
great.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun. I'm always down to talk about abundance mindset and getting out of scarcity mindset. So let's continue the conversation. Hopefully, there'll be another talk opportunity at some point. And thank you again for your time.
Yes, thank you. And please have me back anytime.
Yeah, definitely. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.